The EFL Championship had a huge set of fixtures in EFL Round 18 with some absolutely magnificent results heading the way for some teams at the top of the table, with other teams falling to defeats that they wish never happened. Now obviously for a team like Derby County, it's another game where they fall to defeat after taking a leading position. You look at Coventry, who continue to extend their gap at the top of the table, and Sheffield United are fighting back into the Championship mid-table. And is there a chance they could be fighting for the playoffs by the end of this season? Now obviously if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. We're going to cover everything from round 17 and look ahead to round 18, so let's dive into it. Now obviously let's talk about those huge games in the EFL Championship. We'll start off with Derby County versus Middlesbrough, which was a huge game for especially Derby County because they had the opportunity to go second in the EFL Championship with all the results on the Saturday, which is absolutely incredible, by the way. And unfortunately, yet again, they fall to defeat. And obviously, they wouldn't have gone second with a win, but if you go back to last Saturday, they dropped another victory, essentially, against Watford, which cost them that opportunity of going into second place. Now, Derby County had the opportunity to go third, I think it was, if they'd have won this game, but ultimately they dropped the ball up against Middlesbrough, who obviously then ended up winning that game. You then have to take a big look at Sheffield United. They're flying back right now. Went 3-0 up against Leicester City. Obviously Leicester City did mount a late comeback, but it was just a little bit too little too late. And yet again we see Coventry take a huge victory, 3-1 up against Charlton, and although they went behind, they weren't behind for long, and ultimately it didn't mean a great deal. And then last night on Monday evening, we did see Birmingham City beat Watford. And I'll be completely honest, the 2 goals from Birmingham City were so avoidable by Watford. And when they did score in the 61st minute, I did expect Watford to come back and get a point, but ultimately that did not happen. Should we now start to take a look at round 18 of the EFL Championship? Now, I have made my predictions and I have taken a look at each one of these games, and it's going to be a very, very interesting week of fixtures. Obviously, you've got Hull City versus Middlesbrough as the late kickoff on Friday. You've then got Charlton Pompey, Derby Leicester and Watford Norwich as those early games. It's going to be interesting to see how this one does transpire. Now obviously if we look at Hull City, they obviously host Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough obviously coming off the back of that turnaround victory up against Derby County, but are they going to be able to continue that? Morgan Whittaker scored late on in that game to score his 5th goal of the season. Joe Goldhart has been in incredible form over recent weeks. It's 9 goals and 2 assists now over the course of the last few games, and if you do look at the insights here, 8 goals in their last 5 for Hull. Haven't kept a clean sheet though in 5, which gives Middlesbrough a little bit of hope. And Raul Giles is ranked at number 1 for big chances created. Middlesbrough also have 8 goals in their last 5, but they have won the previous 2 matches against Hull City, but they haven't kept a clean sheet in 7 games. Now both teams are on sort of hit and miss form. Hull have lost 3 and won 2. Middlesbrough have won 2, drew 2 and lost 1. And it is going to be interesting to see how this one does play out. Middlesbrough will be hoping to close that gap on Coventry. Hull City will be hoping to get into the playoff positions. But who is going to take the victory on this one? For me, I've got a very simple one here, and that is that I think Middlesbrough are going to take the biscuit. I think it's going to be 2-1 Middlesbrough up against Hull City. How that all transpires, I'm not entirely sure, but it is certainly going to be an interesting one. Next up then, we see Charlton as they host Pompey. This is a huge game for me because Charlton Athletic have sort of really fell off the boil recently and have lost the last 4 games in a row. It very much reminds me of the slip that Derby County went on last season. I've mentioned this a few times across the course of the last few weeks, and it isn't necessarily what you want to be discussing, if especially if there's some Charlton fans watching this, but it does feel like a slip down the table is inevitable at the moment. Now, over the course of the last 5 games, it's only 3 goals for Charlton, but they haven't lost to Pompey in their last 6. But obviously, as I mentioned, they've lost their last 4 in a row. Now, Pompey have scored 5 in their last 5. but they haven't scored in their last 2 games, which is obviously very, very disappointing. Josh Murphy has created the most big chances for Pompey at 5, but it's not looking great for Pompey. If we do just scroll down, Charlton are falling into that relegation scrap. Pompey are well within that relegation scrap. Are they going to be able to get themselves out of it? This is going to be a very, very interesting one. Now, as we look at the head-to-heads on screen, my prediction for this game, unfortunately for those Pompey fans, does fall in the favour of Charlton Athletic. I just think that Charlton Athletic are going to have a little bit too much for Pompey. I don't think that either side are tremendously good, do not get me wrong, but I just think that when you look at the two sides, I just think Charlton have that little bit of an edge. We then head on into Derby County versus Leicester City. Now, this is essentially one of the biggest games of the weekend. Some people will consider it the East Midlands derby. Obviously, Derby County, local rivals with Forest, Leicester, the other local team. But for me, as a Derby fan, I don't particularly see this as a rivalry. But it is a huge game for Derby. They lost their last home game, 3-2 against Watford after being 2-0 up. You then had the situation Saturday just gone against Middlesbrough, where they took the lead after 2 minutes and then failed to convert into a single point, let alone all 3. And something that's got to change this weekend is being able to hold on to a lead. Now, if we take a look at the insights for both teams, Derby have scored 9 in their last 5, but they've conceded the most penalties this season with 4, and we've failed to keep a clean sheet in the last 6 games. Now, Leicester City have scored 7 in their last 5, but they haven't lost to Derby in their last 6 meetings. However, those meetings were a long time ago. There was a friendly match a couple of years ago, but other than that, Derby County and Leicester have not faced off in a competitive match for a long while. Now, if we do look at the recent results, Derby County have lost 2 of their last 5. I think they're on a run of 6 wins in 8, which is obviously brilliant for Derby County after 1 win in 10 to start the season. You look at Leicester City, they've lost their last 2 games back to back. They've obviously, they did beat Stoke, they did beat Norwich, and they did pick up a draw against Middlesbrough, but they find themselves in a little bit of a difficult position. Now, if we do go and look at the league table, Derby County find themselves in 11th after last night's win for Birmingham. That puts them on 26 points from 11 games, and they will obviously have the hope that they can end Saturday in the playoff positions, but it's one of those games that's going to be really, really difficult. Leicester City just 2 points behind Derby County with 24 from 18. They're going to hope for a victory so that they can pull themselves out of this sort of like relegation melee down here at the bottom, which I think realistically, yes, it does probably go up to Blackburn at the moment, but a couple of results down below and you've got the likes of Leicester, Charlton, Watford, South. Like, you've essentially got the whole league involved in this because it is very, very tight there at the top of the table. Now, as we look at the head-to-head, it doesn't look great for Derby County, but obviously they haven't played in a competitive fixture since back in 2017, and obviously before then it was 2014. So this is a huge game for Derby County, a game in which they're going to want to win at home. It will be pretty much a sellout crowd, which is as expected for Derby County. And in my opinion, I think Derby County are going to take this one 1-0. But obviously, you can let me know your thoughts on that down in the comments. Watford, they host Norwich, and they'll be hoping to bounce back from defeat in midweek, but who is going to be able to take the points in this one? Watford have scored 7 in their last 5, but have failed to keep a clean sheet in those games too. We all know how good Lueza is. We don't need to talk about him. But Norwich City have scored 7 in their last 5, but they have also won the last 4 matches against Watford, but they haven't kept a clean sheet in 14 games, which puts you in a real difficult spot here. Now, Watford have only won 1 of their last 5, which is identical to that of Norwich City, and it's going to be interesting to see how this one goes. Norwich City picking up their first win in a long time on Saturday as they beat QPR 3-1. Is it time for the Norwich resurgence? You can let me know your thoughts on that down below. If we look at the league table, Watford on 24 after 18, Norwich on 13 after 18. Who's going to take the victory in this one? For me, there's only one way that I can look for this one based on the current season and the form that we've seen, and that is that Watford are going to take the victory. I think Watford are going to win this one 2-0, but obviously everyone has their own opinions. Let me know your predictions down in the comments. Now, to start off the 3 p.m. kickoffs, Blackburn host Sheffield Wednesday, and we've got to be honest in this one, and I have put down, I'm not going to lie about it, I've put a 1-1 draw down. However, after recent news that came out, I think it was just 24 hours ago, that prediction may change because it's difficult to see where Sheffield Wednesday are going to pick up a point from. I'm not going to lie. Now, both teams aren't in the greatest of form. Blackburn have won 2 of 5, lost 2, drew 1. Sheffield Wednesday haven't won in a fair while. They haven't won in 12 attempts. Which puts you in a real difficult spot. They've lost 4 on the spin. They've only scored 3 times in those 4 games as well. 2 of them coming on Saturday. It's a real difficult position for Sheffield Wednesday. I do feel for them, but obviously we all remember how they treated Derby County during their administration period. Now, obviously, if we look at the insights, 5 goals in the last 5 for Blackburn, and Sheffield Wednesday have scored 4 in 5, haven't kept a clean sheet in 5, and haven't won in 5 games. Now, let's look at the league table. Blackburn down in 18th on 20 points from 17. Sheffield Wednesday minus 10 from 18 after having another 6 points deducted just a couple of days ago, which is obviously disappointing for them, but at the end of the day, the writing's pretty much on the wall for them. They will be in League One next season, hopefully with a new buyer, otherwise they'll be spending another season on minus 12, but obviously you can let me know your thoughts on that. I have said that it will be 1-1 in my prediction sheet on Excel, but it's one of those situations where, to be honest with you, it all depends on how they react. Now, if I go back to Derby County's administration season, when we got the news was going into administration, we won the next game 2-1, I think it was. We went through a load of shit that year at Derby County, and I think it gave us the opportunity to really sort of put our best foot forward because we had nothing to battle with. And I do hope at some point Sheffield Wednesday hit that point, but as it stands right now, they certainly haven't. Now, Bristol City host Millwall in what is going to be a huge game for these two sides. Bristol City have won 2 of their last 5. Millwall, the exact same. They're literally in the exact same boat when it comes to form. 2 losses, 1 draw and 2 victories, although Millwall have won their last 2 games back-to-back, including a big win over Southampton, Southampton who have been on incredible form recently. Now, I think it's going to be 3 wins in 3 for Millwall. I think they're going to win this game 3-1. I don't know where I get the 3 from, I'm not going to lie, but Millwall are on 31 from 18, Bristol City are on 29 from 18. And if we look at the head-to-head, it's Millwall who are just edging it in that favour, but if we go back to last season, it was a double by Bristol City, but that is time for change, and that's what we're going to see from Millwall this weekend. Now, you can obviously let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you have not done so already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell. Next up, it's a huge clash at the top of the table for Ipswich Town. I'm not saying it's massive for Ipswich, but this is massive for Coventry. They have a 10-point gap. They're going to look to want to extend that. And having this game up against Ipswich Town is a massive one because Ipswich Town have started to sort of pick up a rhythm in recent weeks. Now, don't get me wrong. I know they lost to to Oxford United, over the course of the last few days. But it's one of those for me where Ipswich, once they hit their button and they continually hit that button, they will go on and they will fly. And what we've seen with Coventry, it is outrageous. It is genuinely outrageous. I can't see past a Coventry win, but it's one of those for me where if Ipswich Town get a goal, I think they've got the capability to be able to hold on. Obviously, as we look at the league table, Coventry City on 43 with a plus 32 goal difference. It is absolutely ridiculous. 50 goals in 18 games, which is absolutely ridiculous. And you look at Ipswich Town, 27 from 17. Obviously, a victory in their game against Blackburn, which is their game in hand, would put them into the playoff positions as of right now, but obviously that can all change over the course of the next few weeks, and we obviously find ourselves in a real difficult position in that sort of conversation. But for me, I have it down as a 1-1 Coventry and Ipswich. I'm not entirely sure why. I just have a feeling. I just think that both teams, sometimes you just need to get in and get out and take something from the game, and that's what Ipswich and Coventry will be hoping that they do. Now, I do just want to check something in regards to Ipswich because I need to know when that game is versus Blackburn. It's actually today, as of time of recording. So, who knows? Ipswich could be going into this off the back of a victory. Now, obviously, I haven't got that result in front of me because the game hasn't played, as you can see on screen. But we will deal with that at a later date. Now, Preston North End take on Wrexham in what is going to be a huge game for Preston. Obviously, they find themselves in the playoff positions. They've had an excellent start to the year. And I think we've got to be completely honest as Stoke fans, Preston fans, Hull fans, Derby fans, right? All 4 of those teams were battling relegation at the back end of last season. And all 4 of those teams are well in the hunt for playoff positions this year, and potentially even automatics, depending on the situation with Middlesbrough and stuff like that. So we've got to give those managers a huge pat on the back for the turnaround that they've had. Now, obviously, back onto Preston versus Wrexham. Preston 30 from 18. Wrexham 26 from 18. If we look at the head-to-head picture, there's only been one game, and it's Wrexham that won it 3-2 back in August. But is this the game where Preston North End get their own back? It's 2 wins, 2 draws and 1 defeat for Preston. It is 2 wins and 3 draws for Wrexham. For me, I've got a Preston North End winner, and I think it's going to be Lewis Dobbin to score it. Obviously, don't put your bets on based on my description, but obviously let me know what you think. QPR then host West Bromwich Albion in what is going to be a huge game for me. Both QPR and West Brom are decent teams, right? But both of them have had their ups and downs so far this season. Obviously, West Brom, 2 wins in their last 5. QPR, 2 wins in their last 5. 2 defeats for both as well, and 2 draws for both. And it is going to be interesting to see how this one does go. They're both sitting bang next to each other in the division. West Brom 12th, QPR 13th, and I think this is a massive game. West Brom normally take the biscuit in this one, and I've got them taking the biscuit again. With West Brom scoring twice, QPR not being able to return, and it being a 2-0 West Bromwich Albion win. We then head on to Sheffield United versus Stoke, which for me I think is a huge game. Sheffield United have won 3 in a row now. They're 4 unbeaten, and they really seem to have turned a corner under Chris Wilder. Now, I think we should be brutally honest with ourselves about Sheffield United. They are an outside shout for the playoffs. If they get the January window right, which I know a lot of their loan players will be heading back, there's going to be a big turnover at Sheffield United for Chris Wilder as he gets this team into shape. And I do think that they could be pushing those playoff positions by the end of the year. Obviously, Stoke City haven't had the greatest run of form. 3 defeats out of their last 5, but 2 wins in there as well against Charlton and Oxford. It's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. Now, obviously, if we look at the league table, Stoke are 4th, 30 points from 18 games. Sheffield United are finally out of that relegation zone, 19 points from 18, and they're not that far away from that battle at the top of the table. And if we look at the head-to-head, it's Sheffield United who normally win these games, and I've got Sheffield United winning it again with a 2-0 victory up against Stoke City. You've then got Southampton hosting Birmingham, 2 teams in incredible form. It's 3 wins out of 5 for Birmingham. It's 4 wins from 5 for Southampton. It's been a massive turnaround for Southampton over the course of recent weeks, but are they going to be able to pick up another victory? Now, for me, the answer to that question is no, but Birmingham City have 28 from 18, Southampton 24 from 18. If you look at the head-to-head, it's Southampton who normally win this game, but they've only played once, and that was back in, they've only played twice in the last 10 years, and that is last season. Where Southampton, was it last season or season before? But whatever, Southampton won both games. Now, I think heading into this one, I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw. Both teams are in really good form. They're defending brilliantly as well. And I think that is going to be the thing which closes out that game. Now, in terms of Swansea versus Oxford, it is definitely the battle of the idiots. Oxford have been really struggling over recent weeks. I know they picked up a good victory against Ipswich Town and a couple of good draws as well against Norwich and Borough, but ultimately they are struggling down near the bottom of the Championship. Swansea have been absolutely horrific. They haven't won in 7 games. They've been really, really struggling. And if we look at these two sides, they're right within the scrap for those relegation places, and defeat could see at least one of them fall in. Now, if I'm going to give anyone the benefit of the doubt in this game, it's going to be Oxford. I've got to give Gary Rowett the credit where it is due, because he is an absolutely phenomenal manager at this level. And I think if we're going to be brutally honest, I think there's more likelihood of Oxford winning this game 2-1 than anybody else. Now, obviously, if you haven't looked at the league table, here it is. Coventry sitting top, Middlesbrough second, Millwall, Stoke, Preston and Bristol City round out the top 6. If we look down at the relegation places, it's Pompey, Norwich and Sheffield Wednesday. And obviously, you've got all these teams in between. Now, obviously, as of time of recording, Ipswich and Blackburn haven't gone head-to-head. Hopefully that game finishes a draw so it doesn't change the league table too much. But thank you so much for watching if you have not done so already. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye, guys.